One evening last year, after another night of terrifying news, I felt completely overwhelmed. My chest was tight, my thoughts were racing, but I couldn't find the words to describe what I was feeling. Fear, sadness, helplessness, everything was mixed together. So I did the only thing that felt possible. I sat down at our old piano in a dark living room and started playing. No sheet music, no plan, just my fingers moving across the keys. A few minutes later, my mom quietly walked in. She stood there listening. When I finished, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said softly, "I understand." I hadn't said a single word, but somehow she understood everything. That moment stayed with me, because it made me realize something important. In that moment, I didn't need to explain anything. I didn't need the right words. Music spoke for me. But outside of the moment, I noticed something very different. During war or any kind of national crisis, we are surrounded by information. Numbers, headlines, updates. We talk about what is happening, who is responsible, what comes next. Everything becomes about facts and events. But very little space is left for what is happening inside us. The heaviness, the confusion, the emotional overload that we don't always know how to name. And when you don't have the words to describe what you feel, you often stop trying to express it at all. Psychologists call this emotional numbness, when the brain becomes so overwhelmed that it shuts down emotions to protect itself. And emotional numbness is often one of the first signs of deeper mental health struggles. According to the World Health Organization, mental health conditions increased by around 25% globally during crisis situations, and up to 50% of people experience anxiety, depression, and trauma-related symptoms. This means millions of people are not just suffering, they are slowly disconnecting from their own emotions. At first, emotional numbness feels like protection. You stop reacting so strongly, you don't cry as much, you learn to function and survive. But slowly, something shifts. You stop sharing your emotions because it's too hard to explain. Conversations become shorter, families sit together, but everyone is somewhere else in their own thoughts. Friends laugh, but it doesn't feel real. And one day, you notice. You don't even know what you feel anymore. And when many people experience this at the same time, it stops being just a personal problem. It becomes a social one. Empathy starts to disappear. Understanding becomes harder. People start to react faster, sharper, and sometimes even colder. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to feel anymore. And this is part we don't talk about enough. Rebuilding cities is hard, but rebuilding trust, connection, and emotional understanding between people is even harder. If the silence inside us keeps growing, what will happen when the crisis ends? Will we still recognize each other's emotions? Will we know how to listen, not to words, but to emotions behind them? Or will we become a society where people live side by side, but feel completely alone? Because maybe the most dangerous thing about a crisis is not what it destroys outside, but what it slowly turns off inside us. Because the truth is, words are not always enough. Sometimes they feel too small for what we carry inside. Sometimes they feel too risky, like we might say the wrong thing or not be understood at all. So instead of speaking, we stay silent. But there is another kind of language. A language that doesn't require perfect sentences. A language that feels safe. A language that goes straight to the heart. Music. After that evening with the piano, I started noticing the same things everywhere. On the streets, even during blackouts, someone would sing a Ukrainian song. Strangers would stop, listen, and sometimes quietly join in. I see people pause in front of simple murals on damaged walls and give each other small nods, as if saying, "I see your pain too." In these moments, silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. That's when I realized music is another kind of language. It works faster than words and sometimes safer. You don't need to explain anything. There is no risk of saying the wrong things. Music goes straight to the heart. For me, the piano stops being just a hobby. It became a survival tool. It helped me process emotions I couldn't name. It kept me connected to my family when everything else felt broken. And I realized it can be your tool too. So, what can we actually do? We need to start treating music and art not as entertainment, but as first emotional aid. Here's what each of us can do right now. First, create a small emotional ritual. After difficult news, don't scroll more. Pause. Put on one song. But instead of choosing randomly, notice which song you feel drawn to in that moment. Very often, your choice already reflects your state. For example, when I feel overwhelmed or emotionally tired, I choose slower and calmer music. When I feel anxious, I'm drawn to repetitive melodies that help me settle. Then sit quietly for 10 minutes and really listen. Don't try to escape the feeling. Stay with it. Let it exist. Because when we allow ourselves to feel emotion instead of avoiding them, it becomes less overwhelming and more understandable, even if you can name the feeling. This small pause will help you reconnect with yourself instead of shutting down. Second, share music with others. You don't have to explain everything you feel. Instead, send a song to a friend and say, "This is how I feel today." You can even turn it into a small habit. For example, a song of the day with your friends, where each of you shares one track that reflects your mood. It might seem simple, but it creates a different kind of conversation. One that feels safer, more honest, and more real. Third, create small spaces for art. Play music, sing together, draw something. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real. These moments might feel simple, but they create something powerful, a shared emotional experience. And after that, people often feel lighter, calmer, and more connected. Not because the situation changed, but because they are no longer alone in it. Music didn't stop the war, but it kept me human. It gave my emotions a voice when the words failed. Now it's our turn. Don't wait for peace to make a space for art and music. Start today. In your home, with your friends, in your shelter, because the more we stay connected with our emotions during the war, the kinder and stronger we will be when it's time to rebuild our future together. Staying human is our responsibility. Thank you.